Good afternoon, Marlene. I'd like to introduce to the listeners Marlene Manto, the South Australian e-learning coordinator and content services advisor and online facilitator for e-learning for participation and skills, which is funded by the National VET e-learning strategy, I believe. Is that correct, Marlene?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. This interview is created as part of Week 2 e-facilitation coursework and should run for a maximum of about 5 minutes. So hopefully we'll get into that.
All right, I'll talk fast.
I'm going to get into asking those questions now. And so, Marlene, can you tell us what is your background? E.g., have you worked in traditional training or VET training?
Yes, I did. Last century, I used to be a TAFE lecturer in a past life. But since the year 2000, I've been involved in vocational education, professional development through the Australian Flexible Learning Framework.
Okay. So, how long have you actually been involved in facilitating normal training, not e-learning?
Oh, 20 years.
20 years? And when did you first begin working as an online facilitator? I think you said, was that in 2000 or 2001?
Yeah, I began facilitating online training about 10 years ago. I was already using technology for training as part of classroom training prior to that, though. But I really started with e-facilitation about 10 years ago. When one of the earlier LMSs became available in the TAFE I was working at the time, it was called WebCT, I was one of the first to play with it, and I soon developed a staff PD course to encourage others to use it. And then as part of the Australian Flexible Learning Framework, I conducted e-facilitation for national project teams. I learned a lot about developing a sense of community in an online environment.
Right, so basically you'd say that your training was not formal, it was more of a leap in and give it a go sort of style?
Oh, well, back when I started there was no formal training. And in fact I was probably one of the first who developed some early training for other staff. Definitely I had a learn-as-you-go method of skill development.
Okay. And so what was the main thing that sparked your interest about online training?
Oh, initially it was need. It provided the flexibility for students. It meant I could reach out to people without needing to be in the same room. But that was at the beginning. But then as the technologies evolved, I could see that there were opportunities for making training so much more engaging. So, yeah, it became a lot more than that.
Okay, all right. So how would you describe what is online training?
Perhaps that's best answered in the negative, as in what it isn't. And what it isn't is putting resources online, because a lot of people think that's it. If you walk into a classroom and you've got really wonderful resources and you drop them in the middle of the table and tell everybody, there you go, people, go for it, and then walk out, that's not teaching, and yet that's what people do in an online environment. They put up all of these things on the internet and they think that's e-learning, but it's not. Good e-facilitation is basically good teaching. It's the ability to use the resources to assist learners to gain new skills or understanding, to support them and encourage and monitor and cajole and reward and all the things that good teachers do. So I think that's what online training is. It's teaching, but in an online environment.
Okay. And do you feel that the skills required for face-to-face teaching and training are different from those that are required on online training?
Not the essential teaching skills. And in fact, I've seen too many trainers get sucked into the sexiness of using technology, completely forgetting about what makes a good teacher. But of course there is the additional skill of utilising and incorporating different tools and technologies to provide the best outcomes for the student. So essentially, no, I think the basic skills are the same. A good teacher is a good teacher. But to be a really good e-facilitator, you really need to feel confident in an online environment. So that's probably an additional skill.
Okay, we're running out of time and I'd like to ask you a couple more questions, so we might just expand this into one more section, so I'll contact you soon.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, we're back with Marlene, and it's been very informative so far, and I'd really love her to complete the answering of a couple of other questions I have for her, and thank you very much, Marlene, for partaking in this once again. One of the other questions is, have you found if there are any negatives to providing online training?
Only when there is an expectation that students are all the same, and also an expectation they can teach themselves using online resources. If there's adequate support, and especially where students have got challenges such as a lack of e-literacy or other issues, you've got things like ESL students, but if there's adequate support, then online training can still be quite successful, and indeed it can be quite empowering. So that's the only negative, is if that type of support does not exist, then online training can be quite negative for the student.
Yes, so the support is the main thing with regards to online e-learning, is what I'm getting from all of your conversation. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yep.
Okay. Conversely, what are the positives to providing online training?
Oh, there's lots and lots of them, but given time, it allows the opportunity for training to those who may otherwise not be able to get the opportunity. Distance, work, family commitments, all those reasons. With a good e-facilitator, it can also be more engaging and interesting than chalk and talk traditional training. So I think there are a lot of positives.
Right. And finally, what advice would you give to somebody, namely me, who's just starting out in e-learning?
That's a tough one. Do a course such as the e-facilitation course, I think, is my biggest advice. Watch what an experienced e-facilitator actually does. Ask lots of questions and take the opportunity to pick their brains. You learn a lot from the content of something like the e-facilitation course, but you'll learn more by actually giving things a go, such as what you're doing now, Karen, and also by asking your e-facilitators why they do things a particular way. Set aside time for your own ongoing PD. I think is really important, as the training paradigm is constantly changing. Anyone stuck in the old way of thinking about training will eventually become unemployable. So it is a real priority for people to, look at their own PD in things like e-learning and e-facilitation. The most important thing, think positive and enjoy the ride. That's it.
Well, once again, thank you very much for your assistance with regards to this interview, and I have enjoyed the comments that you've made, and I'd love to spend hours sitting and talking to you, but we don't have that time. So thank you very much, and I'm going to end the recording now.